Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. You know, it's been a long time, a full 5 minutes since we last recorded.
A full 5 minutes.
I'm excited.
Oh, another thing that I'm doing. This podcast. That's another thing that I'm doing this week.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to think of things that I was doing. This podcast is the big one. This podcast and my biannual replay of Fallout New Vegas. So those are really where
That's
I'm spending my time.
That's a lot to do that. Play the game twice a year, jeez.
Am I playing it twice a year, or is it once every 2 years?
Oh,
it's the same word either way.
That's
you
true.
don't know.
See? Could be every 2 years. I think it's twice a year.
It's whatever. It's up to you. I have a TV show though for you to listen to me explain.
Oh,
right. What's the name of the show, Jake? You know the name.
6 Feet to Nowhere. I'm very excited for this one. I'm interested to see what you did with that, because, you know, there's a couple of allusions you could have made. I don't know. What is nowhere? What does that mean?
What is nowhere? What things are 6 feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be like a reference? Could it be the grave? Could it be someone's height, right? Could it be a long and complicated insult? Like 6 feet to nowhere.
I was afraid.
Because at the top of your head,
I was afraid.
Is nothing because you're stupid.
Oh,
yeah.
See, I'm afraid that I was afraid when I pitched it to you, or the name, that you're going to take it literally and there's going to be 6 feet. Is there going to be 6 feet?
I didn't do that.
There's a long pause here.
I should have. That's funny. I should have done that. I didn't.
Okay,
I went more for the grave thing.
I'm
right?
glad. I was scared scared there'd be a thing with 6 feet, and you're gonna be like 6 feet to nowhere. Whatever. I'll be like, fuck you.
I went more for the grave illusion, right? 6 feet to nowhere, and I was like, what the fuck am I gonna do with this, right? I couldn't come up with anything, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna think about where nowhere could be. What could nowhere be, and how do you go 6 feet to something, right? So here's the idea I came up with. Cliff Hampton is a mid-20s barista and geocacher who's become obsessed with becoming an incredible geocaching legend. He is an intelligent, curious, but occasionally oblivious and overly confident man, right? He is our main character. He is our audience surrogate. He makes coffee, and he's a geocacher. Do you know anything about geocaching, Jake?
Is that the people that know where places are on that map game thing?
No, that would be a geoguesser. A geocache is basically, it's like a scavenger hunt, right? So people go to geocaching forums on Reddit or whatever, and they'll have someone will write down a bunch of clues, right? And from those clues, you have to figure out where in your specific area the thing is. And then you post a picture of you finding the thing, and it's just basically clout, on the internet. It's
okay.
Seemingly it's just harmless fun, but I have always thought it's kind of a strange hobby to me. Just finding things that internet strangers leave, in a park somewhere near your house, right? But I was like, I made him a geocacher because it introduces, it provides a good intro to the show. So, I'll just start with that. Cliff is searching through a local graveyard on a rainy night trying to find his final cache for the day, right? We're going to set up that he's in this geocaching tournament, right? And whoever finds the most caches by a certain time, right, wins the tournament. And he, obviously wanting to be great at this, he's really trying hard, and it's he's cutting it down to the wire, and it's late, and he's in his small town's local graveyard. It's late at night, it's windy, it's raining, there's lightning, right? He's looking around, he's touching the gates and the entryway to see if there's anything, because the graveyard is locked at night. When he looks up and he sees two men kind of mysteriously leering over this one loathsome gravestone. Lonesome, not loathsome. Lonesome gravestone, right? And he looks away for a second, like maybe a bird caws or lightning strikes or something. He looks away for a second, and he looks back, and those 2 men are gone, right? Disappeared, without a trace. And so he sees that, and he thinks to himself, like, God damn, that must be where the geocache is, right? Like, I know in the forum it says that we can't break any laws to get any caches, right? But that's where the last geocache is, so I gotta climb the fence to this graveyard and go and, like, get it. And so he, like, clambers over this fence and falls over. He's not a very highly coordinated guy, right? But, he's not, like, overweight or anything. He falls onto the ground kind of hilariously. He's covered in mud. He goes up and he starts, like, feeling around the gravestone, not even really looking at it. He starts feeling around the back and the front, trying to find any sort of difference or notch or something. And the rain and the wind is in his face and blowing everywhere as he's investigating the stone. And he finally he looks up at the stone, and this lightning strike happens right behind him, right? Not, like, literally behind him. I mean, like, in the show, there would be a lightning strike, and the gravestone is illuminated, right? And he looks up, and he sees it's completely blank. Not as if it has been eroded, but as if there has never been any writing on this gravestone, right? And he looks up, and he's like, what the hell? And as he looks up at the gravestone, the ground beneath him, where the body would be, begins to swallow him up, right? Like quicksand. It begins to eat him and bring him down and deeper into the earth. And he grabs onto roots and moss and rocks. His nails chip as he begins and tries to pull himself up and break free of this seemingly mystical, like, hold that the dirt has on him. And he finally does. He's bleeding, he's coughing, but he's, like, pulled himself up, and you think maybe he's gonna break free of this whatever it is. And then as soon as, like, the look of, like, joy, it, like, strikes across his face because he thinks he's gonna live, skeletal hands shoot up from underneath the dirt and grab his skin and grab his clothes and his face, and they pull him right down, screaming, down under the ground, right? And then we, look up at the gravestone, title drop, we have the, like, thick, red, oozing blood font, right? 6 feet to nowhere, right? And then we have our title sequence, which is Cliff falling down this Alice in Wonderland style, like, series of holes and tunnels leading ever downward, passing all sorts of strange faces, visages, things that you recognize and things that you don't.
Sort of like Halloween-y, or like silly Halloween-y, or is it like serious?
I think it's discordant. I'm not even sure it's spooky as much as it's just like put an instrument out of tune and then play it, right? Like a flute or a clarinet or a trombone, right? Out of tune. And then we play like some very, simple melody, right? And we're getting our names, and he's like being whacked. I'm assuming all of this is kind of like in an animated thing and sort of a silhouette, right? He's whacking against roots and trees, and then he starts to whack against like pillars, and then he starts to whack against like walls until he finally just lands onto the hard ground. And he looks up, and it's this dusty, sandy area. And he looks around, and there's sky. Seemingly there's sky, even though he's underground, right? And that's our, like, intro. And we look up, and he's fucked up, right? Episode 1, Cliff, he has arrived into nowhere. And he stumbles his way through this desert wasteland for a few minutes, or for a few hours, until he stumbles upon a town of dirt, right? It's not a town called Dirt. It's Town of Dirt, right? That's the full name of the town, right? And he's just like, it's this seemingly pseudo-medieval, like, Western-style town. I realize we've both done, like, sort of Western-inspired stuff in our last two episodes.
This is the problem with our title thing. Is that, our title thing and the fact that we're double recording and neither of us knew what the other person was doing.
But mine isn't really. I mean, one of the main character, the second main character is kind of a cowboy, but besides that, it's not really as western.
You know, it's a space cowboy, dead.
Yeah.
Weird, dead hell cowboy. You know, that's different. Cowboys are cool. You know, we're American, Charlie.
And we're American. We love it. Mm-hmm. And he goes into the bar, right, in the saloon. And at first, everybody kind of just looks like a normal cowboy saloon person. And he's not really paying attention. He goes up to the bar. He gets a glass of water, right? He drinks it down really fast, like just chugs it. And then he looks around, and everything becomes slightly more surreal. Like, he looks up, and imagine it's sort of like, think A Nightmare Before Christmas. Like, the townsfolk, it's every conceivable, like, weird idea you've ever had. You know, there's a man who's got ears instead of eyes. There's a werewolf. There's a woman who's had her, you know, entire torso replaced with a refrigerator, right? Like, every weird idea that you could had is these townsfolk. So mix that idea of, like, just a kaleidoscope of strangeness with the scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where Hunter Thompson is, like, he eats all the blotter acid, and then he, like, hallucinates all the lizards in at
the bar,
in
and the ground
hotel.
is moving up and down, and he's
exactly,
crazy
and
camera
so
shots
he, you know, he's like freaking out, but he's not high. Like, this is just what's going on around him. He's just like freaking out, and he knocks some guy's drink over, right? And this guy, he stands up, you know, he apologizes. Cliff apologizes to him profusely, and the guy stands up, and he's like 7-8 feet tall, right? He's got like 3 arms. He's, you know, pulling out a knife. He's gonna kick the shit out of this guy, right? And that's when, wait one sec. Lewis Longshot Booth steps in between them. Lewis is a gunslinger turned traveler of the unknown. He knows much about this strange world and this strange land, but he enjoys the fear that Cliff exudes throughout their entire adventure. So he tends to keep a lot of information to himself, unless specifically asked, right? Because he just likes how scared Cliff is, because he's so, like, it's also blasé to him, you know? Mm-hmm. And so, Lewis Longshot, I'm just gonna call him Longshot from now on, because that's kind of his name, mostly, steps in between. He says, hey, Merle, leave the kid alone, right? Merle's like, I don't want to fuck you, Longshot, you son of a bitch, you old coot, right? You think you take me, you couldn't take blah, 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 like, he starts talking all that shit, and as soon as he takes a breath, Longshot has, like, shot him in the head with his, like, cool Colt 45, like, cool cowboy gun, right? And this massive bar brawl starts to break out, right? And Cliff's throwing punches, but he's not really doing anything because he's like a weenie barista geocacher guy, right? Mm-hmm. But Longshot's, he's holding his fucking own. He's like kicking guys' ass, you know, and eventually the sheriff of the town walks in. He puts a hole in the roof with his shotgun. He says, listen up, boys, you know, you stop fighting, right? He's like a lion man, right? Fires his shotgun in the air, stops everybody fighting, they go back to drinking, right? And this is seemingly, you get the impression that this happens quite often, right? Like the piano player in the corner, right? As soon as he hears the fight going on, he like ducks underneath, or maybe he's, you see a guy playing a piano in the corner and you think, oh, that guy's gonna be like, you know, he's a little old man, he's just a normal human man, and then, you know, he stops playing and then like mechanically unbuilds and like hides inside of the piano like some sort of horrible cowboy transformer, right? What I'm trying to get across is this is a very strange, weird
cowboy
world.
Transformer.
And Cliff is talking with Lewis, and he's like, thanks for saving my life back there, you know, you really saved me an ass kicking. And Lewis Longshot is like, don't worry about it, kid, you know, us humans gotta stick together down here. And he's like, where exactly is down here? Like, I was looking for a geocache a few minutes ago, and now I'm here. Where is here? And he's like, you know what, son? I like you. You're funny. I'll tell you what. You beat me in a drinking contest, and I'll tell you everything you want to know, right? And everyone stops. because Longshot is a notoriously expert drinker, right? He's incredible at drinking. Cliff, not much of a drinker, right? But he's like, you know what? I need to know. So line him up, right? And of course, we do a fun montage of them throwing back shots, and they're doing beers, and they're doing a dance, right? Kicking their legs like the girls do, you know, that sort of thing.
Can dance machine, like.
Exactly. Lewis is like, Longshot's drunk, right? He's like slurring his words a little bit. He's, you know, enjoying himself. Cliff is beyond the precipice. He is fucked up, right? He's sorry. Right? Like, absolutely beyond the pale. Like, no responsible person would allow him to drink anymore. Good thing for Longshot and Cliff, there are no responsible people in this bar, right? So they keep drinking, they keep drinking, they keep drinking. And just as Cliff is about to admit defeat and just say, it's fine, right, and pass out, that's when the town is attacked. Raiders on motorbikes, you know, and dirt bikes come skidding across. They have these massive flags and swords, and they're slicing up people. They're cutting down women and children. They're fucking monsters, right? And so Lewis, drunk, gets up and he starts firing. He kills guys, right? And all this time, Cliff, what do you mean?
I'm just confused where this is going. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Cliff is like, this entire time he's just doing kind of a drunk wander, right? We do kind of that classic comedic bit of the guy is in tons of danger, but he's so drunk, you know, that he's like missing the danger just by millimeters, like a Mr. Magoo style, right?
Yeah. Just like bullet slides right off his face, and he swings a sword, and he that's like the exact moment when he slips or his back bends backwards. Just slides right over, laughs, grabs another cup, tries to drink it.
Exactly, just...
It somehow blocks a sword as it hits his face. Somebody takes him out.
Yeah, gets shot out of his hand. He, you know, spits out whatever he had in his mouth because it tasted bad, and it, like, stops an intruder who was about to stab him, and then, you know, he asks the guy for his cigarette, takes a puff of the cigarette, throws it away, catches that guy on fire, right? It's a whole fun, like, goofy action sequence. And Lewis, Longshot, is just like, he's blasting guys. He's fucking killing people. He's really, being drunk has not hampered his ability to kill people at all, right? But eventually, the raiders, these like horrible rat men with fucking swords and guns and all this stuff, they eventually overcome him, right? And we see their leader, right, has a gun to Longshot's head, and he's about to pull the trigger when Cliff whacks the leader in the back of the head with a cup, right? Or like with a bottle, and then, you know, takes a drink. Or maybe he's like turning around really fast with a bottle of booze in his hand and accidentally whacks the leader in the back of the head, knocking him to the ground and saving Lewis's life. You know, and that lets Longshot get the upper hand and like kill all the guys, and that sends everyone, all the raiders, running, right? And so everybody's kind of happy with Cliff, and Lewis is like, you know what, kid? You're alright. And he's talking pretty normally, like, you're alright, I like you, kid. You know what? You saved my life, and I'm your traveling companion. I'm gonna show you around town, as it were. And Cliff is like, and he falls. Like, he passes out right in the street, right? End of episode. So we have no fucking idea where we are. We have no idea what we're doing. We just know these two characters.
Okay.
Episode 2 starts, and Lewis is sitting Cliff's bedside, right? Cliff wakes up, and he's like, oh, you know, he's the worst hangover of all time, and Lewis hands him a clear pint glass. It's like a pint glass, and it looks like it has water in it, so Cliff grabs it, you know, shakily, and takes a huge swig, and spits it all out because, of course, it's vodka, right? And he's like, the best way to cure a hangover is to keep on drinking, son.
Hair of the dog, man.
Yeah. And so, you know, Lewis kind of, like, he gets Cliff up, and they go into the tavern, and the tavern's like, yeah, Cliff, you know, he helped, right? And they, you know, give him breakfast, and of course, looks vaguely like human food, but it's not. Like, the eggs are wrong, right? Maybe the yolk is white and the white is yellow, right? The bacon, right, has, eyeballs in it, right? Like it's human food but wrong, right? Basically. Yeah. And this is when Louis Longshot explains what's going on here. And he basically goes like, every culture and civilization on Earth has a religion. And all of these religions have one thing in common, and that there is a place, right? Some call it hell, some call it heaven, some call it nirvana or Xenu or whatever. But there is a place that exists outside of human understanding, right? It is the area, it is the realm of dreams. It's where our minds live while we're asleep. It's the realm of nightmares, and it's the realm of death and life, right? And that's where we are. We are nowhere, and we are everywhere, right? So everything that could possibly be imagined is down here, right? It's this sort of metaphysical idea of everything, So this place, this nowhere, is, exists everywhere at the same time, and everything exists inside of it, right? And then Cliff obviously is like, does that mean I'm dead? And he's like, no, you can go back up if you want, right? Like, you can go back to your regular human life. It's hard. We have to go talk to the caregiver, or the caretaker, right? And maybe we can do something in episode 1 where, like, Cliff sees this, like, decrepit old, graveyard keeper who's kind of like looking around, looking suspicious, and he ducks inside of his cabin when Cliff sees him. And it will be later revealed that that guy is the caretaker. Ooh. And he basically exists at every entryway to nowhere and kind of lives as sort of a guide / protection, right? He moderates who goes in and out of nowhere.
He's like
right?
the ferryman. What's his name? Like Chiron? Chiron?
Chiron, yeah.
Yeah, Chiron.
Chiron or Charon or whatever,
Charon,
however
yeah.
you want to say it.
I don't know what's right.
Right. And so they hear all, Cliff hears all this, and he's like, at first, he's kind of taken aback, and he doesn't believe it, and Louis says, you don't believe me? Dude, look around. And, like, Cliff looks up, and there's a giant octopus man, and then there's a dude with 3 faces, and then there's, like, Paul Bunyan, right? Because I do think the hardest part about this show is going to be kind of, like, coming up with our own stuff, as well as incorporating other things that already exist, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is everything. This is every imagined reality, all squished into one. Everywhere, every mystery, the solution is down here. That's also a big part of it. Like, where there's going to be an episode in the season where they run into Mayans. And it's like, what happened to all the Mayans? We thought they died of some sort of disease. Turns out they all just went down here. They all got sucked down here by their crazy god. So, sucks for them, right? And they've built this crazy, highly advanced Mayan civilization that you're not allowed to join, because you're not a Mayan. I'm allowed to join because I am a Mayan in my heart of hearts and soul of souls.
Good to know.
Isn't that right, Jake?
Yep.
Yeah. And Cliff, hearing all of this, he realizes that his entire life he's existed in this very mundane world, this mundane existence of his, right? He's a barista. He, the most exciting thing that he does on the fucking weekends is, like, go find garbage that people left online for him to find, right? And so he decides that his new goal, his new life's goal, is to catalog this place, right? The Guide to Nowhere, right? Ooh. And it's going to be sort of half travel journal, half diary sort of situation. And if the show has, like, multiple seasons, we would release new editions every time a new season came out, right? merchandising. You got to remember the merchandising, right? And so he wants to catalog this, to write it down. And Lewis, at first, he laughs in his face. He's like, that's ridiculous. Did you not just hear me tell you this place is infinite? There is no stopping. There's no ending. As long as there is an existence in the universe imagining, this place will go on, right? And he's like, well, then I better bring a lot of paper, because it's going to take a really long time to catalog all of it, right?
So how come he doesn't want to go back to Earth? Just because his life sucks?
It's partially because his life sucks, but it's also because it's so incredibly difficult to get back.
Oh, I kind of like that. It's always, usually it shows, unless you're going to have it eventually, it's always like, okay, they got to start the journey. And he's like, yeah, nah.
Yeah, I was like, I think he would just like, because part of Cliff's character is that he doesn't stick to things very much, right? He gets into something, he gets into it, like really into it, and then he stops, right? He wanted to be the greatest geocacher of the world, and now he doesn't give two shits about geocaching. He thinks it's stupid, right? He kind of he doesn't commit well to things. So I'm just kind of, I think he would be like, yeah, it sounds like someone else.
Guy.
Not me, not Charlie, someone else.
I don't actually think that's you. I was just.
I was saying that's me, but that's fun. But Cliff will be like, it just doesn't seem worth it. It's like, down here exists everything I've ever imagined, right? That means there is 3 Scarlett Johanssons who all want to have sex with me. Like, everything that's been imagined is down here somewhere. They're out there. I will find them. And he's like, this is just so much more interesting and so much more worthwhile than what I was doing before in my life. And it's like, I had no prospects. I had no dreams, no ambitions, right? I was just working to live and like doing stuff in my free time, right? And down here, I've got like a goal, that is exciting and will fulfill me, hopefully. And Lewis at first is like, this is stupid. And then he, Cliff reminds him of his promise, of his oath to stick by him because he saved his life. And so Lewis decides that he guesses it's not the worst idea in the world, right? So they get supplies and they decide to head out, right? They head out onto the town, into the wider nowhere, right? And that's the end of episode 2. Episode 3 starts up, and we're gonna try and we're getting more into the episodic, Monster of the Week stuff, because this show is really not a narrative-based show. I didn't have any, major ideas, I think, like, any major storylines or anything like that. I think trying to build a big bad guy for this show kind of defeats the purpose of it, right? Because if it's infinite, this is an infinite plane of thought. It's like, why do I need to worry about a bad guy who doesn't like me? So
there's always a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish. There's always a guy who will hate me and a guy who loves me, right? And it's like, why would it matter? And so there's that. So I'm not doing really a full, season serialized television. This is episodic. And I had an idea for a ghost town, but it's an actual ghost town, like it's town of all ghosts, and they're being haunted by a woman, like by a person, And our 2 main characters are hired by this ghost town to, figure out what this lone human person wants and get rid of them somehow, right? And so, the whole time, they're investigating the whole thing, and then, final sequence of the episode is they're in a haunted house, and they, hear creaks and crooks and bobbity-blue, Scooby-Doo style shit, right? They find the ghost, in quotation marks, the person, and turns out it's 2 people, it's a couple, right? And what they really, truly want is to belong, right? Their families, kicked them out because they loved each other and their love has never been accepted, right? And they, fell down here and they don't know how they got here, but they, they just want to feel connected. And Cliff leans down and he's gonna start telling them, like, you know, you can be connected, you build your own community, right? It's important that you find your... And as he's, like, mid-pep talk, Lewis shoots them both in the face, right? Like, blows their fucking brains out. Blood and guts everywhere. Cliff starts throwing up. And then they turn into ghosts, and they go and become part of this community, right? Wow. And so it's like Lewis solved the problem. Cliff would have just postponed the inevitable, you know? Mm-hmm. And then I had another idea where it's like they meet a bunch of goblin pirates and sort of become their stowaway sort of minstrel characters, you know, just like, they're, you know, doing a little dance and doing a play for these goblins, and these goblin pirates are driving their land boat across the sea of land that they have. Basically sand. You know, a sea of land. Sand. I'm not sure I've said anything stupider of that in my life.
It's probably... we could go back in the archives.
Yeah, you got all the recordings. You know if I've said something stupider. More stupid.
Yeah, that might have been stupider. Using the word stupider.
Yeah, stupider. Twice. Stupid was 3 times now, goddamn. Goblin pirates, they could encounter abominable snowmen that live in the desert, and they're, you know, they bought a condo, and they don't know how to deal with it. Like, this, you know, 6 Feet to Nowhere provides lots of different variety for weird ideas, but it is not the show with the most directed plot, which is, you know.
No, I like episodic stuff, you know, that's fun, because you can kind of do anything with this. So he's cataloging as he is going. Is this purely diary, or is this like journal entries, or is this a map?
I think it's a bit of everything. Like, I think it's part encyclopedia, part diary, part map. Right? Have you ever seen Gravity Falls?
I have seen parts of Gravity Falls. Yes.
You know the book in Gravity Falls?
Oh,
the book
so
that they're
like
always
that?
reading. Yeah. It's a compendium, like the compendium of nowhere, right? Or the compendium of nothing. And it's a Sisyphean task, right? It's you know, it's never ending, but he is committed to it for some strange reason. And, you know, I think that he's committed to the Sisyphean task because he's just, like, so bored with, you know, completing mundane tasks, right? And so it's something that you can do a little bit every day, right? And it's like there's a new page added. And so he's very much reward based, right? He wants the quick reward for what he's done, and adding a page is reward enough for him, and it gives him a good reason to just wander around with this fucking cowboy dude who we will reveal later is like a famous gunslinger, right?
Oh.
This infamous gunslinger.
He's an Arizona Ranger. The big iron on his hip.
Yeah. Well, he was this infamous gunslinger,
or
right?
Is he Texas
but not
Red?
Actually.
Oh.
The reveal is at first is going to be, actually time doesn't work down here, and you know, I've been wandering the nowhere forever, right? For as long as I can remember, even though I remember being in the Old West. But in actuality, he is a construct of nowhere. This isn't the famous gunslinger. This is the perception of everybody who ever met this famous gunslinger, right? Like the kind of larger than life idea of him, rather than the actual guy himself.
Or like, this is also a good idea to add on, like he's the idea of it from like a folk song, like what this character was.
That could be good.
Like that's, you know, add that on, like that's, you know, one of the perceptions that this guy is.
Yeah. That's why he can, you know, play guitar so good. Maybe he can play guitar.
Maybe he can play guitar.
But that's my show.
Dylan.
He's played by Bob Dylan.
90-year-old Bob Dylan. Still kicking.
Put him in there.
Playing as a gunslinger.
And he's an action star.
What can I ask this real quick? Why do they stay together? Just because they become friends, kind of?
First, I would say it's, this begrudging friendship, right? Because you and me, we love a duo situation. We love an odd couple, right? We have one guy who's a defeatist and another guy who's an optimist. We have one guy who is, like, never done anything of importance in his life, and one guy who is, like, he is the contribution of, someone who was important, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that they stick together out of a sense of familiarity, and they stick together because Longshot just likes seeing what this idiot gets up to. I think that's also part of it. He just thinks it's funny.
Yeah, it's sort of like, first it's out of curiosity, and then it's sort of out of friendship. And, also, what else you got going on in nowhere, And he's got to be there to protect, his friend, because his friend's kind of useless besides the writing thing.
Yeah. Besides the catalog, right? Mm-hmm. And he'll still have, like, his uses, He's still, like, got some things in the locker, right? Maybe we can have an entire episode dedicated to him, like, being challenged in, like, this ancient form of combat that neither him and Longshot have any idea about, right? In this strange village. And then turns out it's making a coffee. Like, that's their version of, like, a to the death tournament, right?
Mm-hmm. And he's like, fuck, I got this easy. And everyone else is shit at it. Like, they love... called the idea of coffee's amazing to them, but they've never actually made one before. And he's like, I got this.
It's all just like brown watery grossness, and he just makes like a perfect, latte or whatever, and they all just like, maybe it would be a funny thing if it's like, he's got the leaf. Oh, come on. It would be funny if like you have to drink your opponent's drink, and whoever, like, if you drink the better drink, you explode. And Cliff drinks his opponent's coffee. He's like, ugh, that's fucking, ugh. Do you even use coffee? Like, that's just gross. I don't know what that is. And the guy drinks it. He's like, this is the most incredible drink I've ever, red mist.
Buzz up.
Yeah.
Almost happy to die because he's tasted something so amazing.
Because he's tasted the perfect beverage.
He's like, he sips it and he's like, I have seen the face of God. And then he blows up.
Yeah, and it is.
It's
I don't know. I can't think of
it. it is caffeinated,
and it is caffeinated. That's perfect. I've seen the face of God, and it is caffeinated. Puff, red mist.
Boop.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you ever wanted to have a longer plot line, not saying like it could like a 3 or 4 episode plot line. I was thinking you could have some sort of thing where he's, because when we get the reveal that what's the gunslinger's name again?
Lewis Longshot Booth.
Okay, so when we get the reveal that Longshots is not actually a real person, we can have our main journaling geocacher guy start questioning whether or not he's real, and he'll go on. He'll want to do the whole thing with the caretaker that you mentioned, not to leave but to find out if he's actually real, because the thing is like it's like bothering him. He wants to know, like, am I actually, did I actually live up there, or am I just a perception of some guy who lived up there?
Oh, and yeah, I like that. And then he could do like almost It's a Wonderful Life style situation, where he goes up and he sees everyone living without him and how they've gotten on. Maybe he had like a trio of friends. It was him, his friend, and another friend, and now the 2 friends are dating, right?
Yeah.
And they're like happily married and they have a kid, and it's all because he left, right? He was the third wheel.
At the end of that, when he goes back to nowhere, we, the audience, see something that hints that possibly what he thought was going back up to the surface was still inside nowhere.
Yeah, that could definitely be it, right? Like one person taking a sip at a bar and they turn around and they have an elephant trunk, Nothing, like, absolutely 100%, but just like, this is weird. This whole weird place is weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. I like that. I like this show. I think it's fun. But it's not the most deep. It's not the deepest show I've ever written, and that's okay, I think.
Maybe literally in the sense that it's very deep underground.
That's pretty good. Now we have one more thing to do before I send us off into Oblivion.
God.
Right? I know next week, quotation marks. I know next week is a episode 10, right? We don't have to individually come up with an idea. But for the following episode, that will be your turn, and I have a list of titles here that I want you to pick.
Oh.
Now, I originally had 9, but we did 7 last week, The War of Drink, and I crossed out number 4 because number 4 wasn't good enough. So, you now have 7 titles to pick from.
Okay, am I not supposed to pick 4 or did you remake the list?
I remade it. I remade the
okay,
list, don't worry.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll go with 3.
3! First and last place.
Is that the name of it, or is that the...
Yeah, that's the name of it.
First and last place.
Yeah, and last place.
I have no idea what the hell I'm going to do for that one, but I guess I'll have to find that out.
Yeah.
Am I going to write it now, or in 3 weeks when we record again?
In 3 weeks, an hour before you record. Who knows?
The answer's number 4.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me, he's always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. You like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat, and remember, we will be here next week with a brand new television series for you to enjoy. Thank you. Sorry, I got a little weird with that at the very end. Goodbye.